arts and education are two things that really should go together like peanut butter and jelly. It's incredible that the amount of resources we really can get from tapping into our artistic sides, and also like digging deep within myself through this process has made me realize really how much art affects me, and waking up every morning and realizing that like throughout the whole day, art is literally everywhere within my 24 hours.
The arts are the best indication of a way to diversify talent and look for innovation and creativity, and that individuality about how you can create things and solve problems will set you apart. Unfortunately, many of our educational institutions and majors don't encourage that.
Art and education has really played a huge role in my life, obviously because I have a career in the art field, and I feel like art has really allowed me to think critically about the world around me, and by critically I mean creatively and knowledgeably, and have just a better understanding about how things work and relate to each other.
I've been involved in music since middle school. I was in choir back then. I started playing piano actually late in high school, but it affected because it gave me a place to fit in. I was a nerd. I still am a nerd. And my freshman year I had nowhere to go, but I went to the choir room and I found a group of people who became my family. It's kept me going. I mean, it really has. And it's also given me a different way to think about things. I'm a math major, and when I approach problems, I approach them from a different viewpoint because I'm a musician. So it allows me to look at things in a different light, and I think it does a better job. I mean, it helps me connect with things better.
And as for me as a kid, like, you don't learn how to count without a person there or two people standing there. You say, oh, that's a mom and a dad, and that equals two people. You give an artist a certain topic or a certain problem, so to speak, you could get anything. I mean, it's insane the spectrum of creativity that rises from artists. So getting to the point, I guess, arts is, like I said, it just goes hand in hand with education, and from children we're encouraged, I hope, to use art in our everyday life.
The arts has drastically affected my education. Growing up, I have always been involved in the arts, and I was a choir student, and I was involved in all of the theater productions growing up in high school. And I can honestly say that being able to be involved in those arts activities is what taught me how to work hard and taught me how to be driven to do something. And I think that thing in particular really affected the rest of my education as a whole. Being able to know that in certain situations, whether you would like to or not, you have to have a good amount of drive in order to get somewhere. You have to have a good amount of dedication and things like that, which are things that you need to have in order to be a successful student, but being in school doesn't necessarily teach you. And finding something that students are passionate about really helps them find a motivation and a drive to be successful in other areas. So if I wanted to be successful and be driven and do things such as the arts, my motivation to do that in turn motivated me to be more successful academically.
Well, I think we're all born as creative people, and I think over the course of our education, if that's not fostered by our teachers and our families, it gets lost. And we're inundated with rules and technology, and I think we're losing our humanity to technology. If you acknowledge your artistic side and you nurture that, since our artistic and our analytical are used two different sides of the brain, I think when we can use our whole brain to integrate things that we learn, it's a much better experience.
Arts for me has been a huge deal. I mean, it's been an outlet. Art is, it's like, you go to school, and for me in school, only way to pay attention was to draw. I had a little notepad, and the only way to pay attention and actually get the material, which is weird, was to actually just draw throughout it. And the only way for me to actually solve things, instead of, you know, solving a math problem, I'd have to draw something, or I'd have to think about a situation that would enable me to answer the problem. I don't know where I would have been without art. I mean, there's nothing like going back home and sitting down with a guitar, or listening to music, or watching a film and really examining it. And as far as education goes throughout college and career-wise, I wouldn't be here without it. I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing without it. So it's helped me really become the man I am today. I couldn't see myself doing anything else. I couldn't see myself waking up and being a math major or being a science guy, because it's just not fitting.
Education as a whole, the arts can be a vital emphasis in helping people begin to see new opportunities and to mark. And you could do, not only can you do this with athletes, you can do it with other people that are in education, business, and so forth.
I think that everything relates to one another. So art relates to history, relates to literature, relates to philosophy, relates to math. And understanding how everything works together is a key part. And you can't understand how everything works together without having everything. So I feel like art really is that glue and that component that brings all of these different forms and fields together.
Right now, there's a lot happening with arts and education in our country, and there's a lot of music programs and a lot of art programs that are being cut from schools simply because of funding, because there's been so much focus on the sciences and so much focus on the more, let's say, testable subjects, and I think that's just a really sad state of affairs, because there's been plenty of studies, and there's so many things that show how students that are involved in the arts, students that are involved in music or in band or playing an instrument, are more successful across the board in all of their subjects. And there's a huge benefit to having these art programs inside the education system.
In elementary school, you use songs to help kids learn. It's a great learning tool. Up into the college level, I'm working on a project where I'm using music to help visually impaired students see graphs and chemistry and stuff like that, and understand types of chemistry that all they have right now is Braille, whereas we have visual and auditory and kinesthetic. All they have is kinesthetic, and it's given them an auditory way to learn too.
I get infuriated that educators, the first thing when they do budget cuts, they want to cut art, they want to cut music, they want to cut theater. These things have been so important in the development of mankind. I noticed that when I was doing medical research, which I did at the University of Tennessee for 10 years, I think that you cannot separate art and science. It's just so intricately intertwined. Artists have to be analytical to some point to come to conclusions that they come to with their art when they're trying to figure out the problems that they face of making art.
It uses philosophy in the existential thinking of how forms and shapes go together aesthetically. It really brings together a lot of different fields and just makes a person well-rounded in their thinking.
You walk around cities, you walk around universities, you walk around anywhere, you look at buildings, you see buildings, and you don't really think too much about it, but really there's art built into that, and the things you see, like, we're taught in art that leading lines and perspective are all essential, but really in reality and life, they're there. And you look down these buildings and you see leading lines and you see what artists actually see, and it's pretty neat. It's a cool thing to see that as an artist and see those kind of things working in reality. Educationally, art is vital. There's there's nothing that you learn without art. I mean, as a kid, you learn to draw before you even learn to write or talk. I mean, and even in history it shows, there was drawings, and art's not even it's not a technical thing. You learn math, you learn science, and it's something that you have to literally pick out and learn. But through art, you're born with it. It's something that's just natural to everybody, and there's some people that are literally born into being an artist, and then there's others who grow into it by learning it.
If I was going to say 2 words that sum up what the arts are for education, I would honestly say that they're the missing link in the educational system. Because being a successful student and learning everything that you need to learn has so much more to do with just gaining knowledge. You have to have students that are able to apply that knowledge. You have to have students who are driven enough and dedicated enough to absorb all that knowledge and to retain that knowledge. And those are all things that an education system by itself inherently doesn't teach. Those are things that you have to dive into a student's passion. You have to somehow develop and foster a desire within that student to see how gaining this knowledge and education is going to benefit their lives. The likelihood is that it's not that they just can't excel at math. The likelihood is that they're missing a drive, or they're missing a desire, or they're missing the understanding of how gaining this math knowledge is actually going to help their lives, that's going to drive them to excel in that subject. Well, if you give them something like music, or if you give them something like art, something that they do care about, they're going to start fostering energy, they're going to start fostering a desire to do well in different things, and that trickles over into everything. And so there's kind of a missing link for a lot of students academically that can really be fulfilled by the arts.
The first word would be necessary, and the second word would be motivational, probably.
2 words that I feel sums up arts and education would be critical thinking.
And I think it's very much essential that we continue to have the arts in education.
It's hard to choose just 2 words. I'd say it helps you escape reality would be my 2 words. To explain that a little bit, it's like you can't sit down and force your mind to like keep pushing it to do something, and in order to, for me at least, I know there's some people out there that can sit and do numbers all day and think all day, but for me, in order to actually survive, literally, I think I'd have to escape reality every day in order to do art, or in order just to live.